Have you ever felt it? That strange silence in your home when you're all alone? The kind of silence that presses down on your chest like something is watching you from the dark corners? They say you only notice the noise when it's gone, but in my case, it was the silence that screamed. My name is Eliezer. People call me Eli. I grew up in a forgotten town, tucked away in the folds of southern Luzon, where broken promises echoed louder than church bells and shadows always seemed a little too thick. I was raised by my grandmother, Lola Faley, after my parents died in a fire when I was just 5. People said it was an accident, but I still remember the screams, the smell of burning wood, and something else, something wrong that night. Something that didn't burn. We were poor, barely surviving on Lola's tiny pension and the vegetables we grew behind the house. The house itself was ancient, made of rotting wood and rusting metal, and stood like a stubborn relic from a forgotten time. Our neighbors had moved away one by one. Eventually, it was just us and a few empty houses with shattered windows and collapsing roofs. But I didn't mind. I had my Lola, and I had Mateo, my best friend since grade school. Mateo had the kind of laugh that could chase away the cold, and he always said we were like brothers, even though he came from a proper family and I came from, well, nowhere. Lola used to warn me about the forest behind our house. Wag kong lalapit sa gubit pag takipsalam na, Eli, she'd say, her voice trembling. There are things there that remember. As a kid, I thought it was just her way of keeping me from wandering too far. But deep down, I knew better. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and hear whispers outside my window. Not the wind, not animals. Whispers, like someone or something was calling me by name. Still, life went on. I worked part-time at a hardware store in town, saved a little, laughed a little, pretended everything was fine. Until Lola died last year. Quietly, in her sleep. She had been sick for months, and I knew it was coming, but when it happened, it was like the last light in my world had been snuffed out. After the funeral, I decided to stay in the house. It was the only home I'd ever known, and I didn't have money to go anywhere else. Mateo came by often, bringing food or just talking nonsense to cheer me up. He was the only one who made me feel like I wasn't completely invisible. But things changed after Lola passed. The house felt heavier, as if something had been waiting for her to leave. Doors started creaking open on their own. Cold spots would appear in random corners, even on the hottest afternoons. And there was this old rocking chair in Lola's room that sometimes swayed slowly, back and forth, even when the windows were shut tight. At first, I blamed my grief. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I just missed her too much. But then I started having dreams, vivid ones. In them, I was a child again, standing in the hallway of our house, staring at a tall figure with no face, just a long neck and pale hands reaching out. The strange part was, I would wake up standing, sometimes in the kitchen, sometimes outside near the forest edge. Sleepwalking, maybe, but I'd never done that before. One night, Mateo and I sat under the mango tree in our yard, eating cheap chips and talking about ghosts. He always loved scary stories. I didn't tell him about the dreams, not yet. Instead, we laughed about a time we tried to summon spirits in grade 6 with a homemade spirit board and ended up running away because the candle flickered. Those light moments helped. For a while. But then I found a journal. It was buried beneath the floorboards in Lola's room. An old, crumbling notebook filled with scribbled prayers, strange symbols, and names I didn't recognize. One page was torn at the edges and written in shaking handwriting. The Watchers see all. Don't let them in. Don't speak their names. That night, the air in the house turned icy. I could hear soft tapping on the walls, tap, 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 like fingernails gently brushing the wood. I checked every room. No one. No mice. No branches hitting the house. Just the tapping, growing slower but louder, as if it was coming from inside the walls. I called Mateo the next morning and told him everything. He listened quietly, for once not joking. He promised to help me figure it out. Maybe your Lola was into something deeper than you thought, he said, half whispering. I wanted to laugh, but my throat felt dry. For the next few days, we tried to act normal. We hung out, watched old horror movies, even joked about starting a ghost hunting YouTube channel. But something was wrong. Mateo said he started having nightmares too, of shadows crawling across the ceiling and long arms pulling him into the floor. Then the animals began to disappear. Stray cats that used to wander our yard were gone. Birds stopped coming near the trees. The forest behind our house grew unnaturally quiet, as if the whole world was holding its breath. On the 7th night after finding the journal, I heard the voice. It wasn't a whisper this time. It was clear, deep, and calling from my Lola's room. Eli. My heart froze. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I stood outside her room, hand on the door, listening. Come home. I opened the door slowly. The room was empty, except for the rocking chair, swaying wildly like someone had just stood up from it. And on the floor, footprints. Wet, bare, leading from the chair to the wall. But the wall was solid. There was nowhere to go. I stepped back, heart pounding in my ears, and that's when I noticed something else. The journal was open, and the page it now showed wasn't one I'd seen before. It had just 3 words, written in red. You let it in. My throat closed. I turned to run out of the room, but standing in the hallway was a figure. Not Mateo, not anyone I knew. Tall, no face, and hands that reached toward me as if they had waited a very long time. The hallway felt like it had stretched, endless and cold, as I stood frozen before the faceless figure. It didn't move. It just stood there, tall and unmoving, its long fingers twitching ever so slightly, as if it was waiting for me to take one step closer. My heart thundered in my chest. My breath came in short gasps. And then, I blinked. It was gone. Gone, like smoke, like it had never been there at all. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by my window, clutching Lola's rosary and staring into the dark forest behind our house. Something had changed. The world felt thinner, as if there was now a crack between what we see and what we're not supposed to. The next morning, I went through more of the journal. Most pages were nonsense, symbols, chants, names I didn't recognize. But in the middle was a folded paper, yellow with age. It had my family name at the top, San Gabriel, and something handwritten in my Lola's trembling script. The curse follows blood. It was never meant to survive this long. A curse? I felt cold all over. My family had always been unlucky, sure. Tragedies, sickness, bad timing. But a curse? That word felt too big, too ancient. I thought of the fire that killed my parents, the shadows in the house, the whispers that started after Lola died. What if none of this was random? Mateo arrived around noon. I didn't tell him everything. I was still trying to make sense of it myself. But I showed him the journal and the footprints. He didn't laugh this time. He didn't even speak for a long while. Then he said, Eli, I know someone. He's old. Lives way past the river bend. They call him Mang Isco. People say he's an albulario, but different. Like he sees things we don't. I didn't believe in folk healers or spirits before, but things had changed. I told Mateo to take me there. The walk was long and quiet. The trees felt older on this side of town, thicker, hungrier. It was already late afternoon when we reached the small hut hidden behind layers of vines and banana leaves. A strong scent of burning herbs filled the air. Mang Isco was waiting. He was small, stooped, with skin like dry leaves and eyes too sharp for someone his age. When he looked at me, it was like he saw straight through my skin and into my memories. He didn't ask our names. Instead, he nodded slowly and said, You finally heard the voice. I froze. What do you mean? You were marked long ago, he said. Even before your birth. Your family made a pact. And now it's time to pay. My blood ran cold. He motioned us to sit and took out a small carved box. Inside was a smooth, glowing mutia, a bluish stone, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. He handed it to me without a word. The moment I touched it, something clicked inside me. Like a door I didn't know existed had opened. My ears rang. My hands shook. And then I saw it, flashes of fire, my parents screaming, a dark shadow laughing behind them, and my Lola, chanting, binding something with prayer and blood. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the hut. You saw it, didn't you? Mang Isco whispered. The pact was made with the Iswang S.A. Sillingen, a powerful clan of shape-changers that dwell between the living and the dead. Your great-grandfather was desperate. Your family was starving. He gave them blood in exchange for survival. But when your parents tried to escape the curse, they broke the balance. That's why they died. I sat in stunned silence. All my life, I thought I was just unlucky. Now I was hearing that my whole family was cursed because of some forgotten deal made generations ago. But why now? I asked. Why are they after me? Because you're the last San Gabriel, Mang Isco said, and the last barrier between their world and ours. If they consume you, they can cross over. Permanently. My chest tightened. So what do I do? I asked, voice shaking. He handed me the Mutia. This stone was given to your Lola. She protected you with it for years. It's not just a charm. It holds ancestral memory and power. You must train to use it. But the Aswangs, they're already close. That night, I stayed at Mateo's place. His mother, unaware of everything, made a sinigang and even joked that I looked thinner. But I couldn't eat. My thoughts were spinning. What kind of training? How much time did I have? At 3 a.m., I woke to scratching at the window. At first, I thought it was a tree branch. Then I remembered Mateo didn't have any trees near his room. I walked slowly to the window and peeked out. A woman stood there barefoot, hair covering her face. She wasn't moving, just staring at the house. I couldn't see her eyes, but I felt them burning through the glass. And in her hands was a baby. Only it wasn't crying. It wasn't even moving. It was wrong. I stepped back, heart pounding. The Mutia in my pocket burned hot, almost like it was warning me. I clutched it, praying silently. When I looked again, she was gone. In the morning, Mang Isco came to see me. He told me that the Aswang Sa Silingan were testing me, trying to weaken my will. They couldn't enter without permission, not yet, but they were watching, waiting for me to break. He started training me in old rites, cleansing rituals, prayer chants in forgotten dialects, and ways to sense the presence of hidden beings. The Mutia responded to emotion. Fear made it dim. Courage made it glow. I practiced in the forests, blindfolded, learning to feel the wind, the trees, the movement of unseen spirits. Sometimes I would hear whispers. Sometimes I would see shadows dart between trees. But I was getting stronger. One night, while meditating near the edge of the old cemetery, something strange happened. The ground beneath me shifted, and I fell into a hidden pit, an ancient chamber buried beneath the soil. Inside were carvings of old battles, humans and Aswangs, locked in war. At the center was a statue of a warrior holding a kabibi shell that glowed faintly, like the Mutia. I touched it. Visions came rushing in, this time of me, standing with others, facing a monstrous shape with wings and fangs. And behind me, spirits of my ancestors, chanting, watching. I was meant to fight, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. Back at the hut, Mang Isco warned me, the Aswangs are growing impatient. They've tasted blood near your home. Soon, they will break the veil. And then came the worst news. Mateo didn't show up one day. His phone rang endlessly. When I went in his house, his mother was crying. He had gone into the forest, alone, looking for answers, looking for me. But he never came back. I stayed at the edge of the forest for hours that night, calling Mateo's name until my throat hurt. The trees didn't answer, just the wind, brushing against the leaves like whispers. I kept hoping I'd hear him laugh or say I was being dramatic, but there was only silence. Mateo was gone. The guilt was instant, heavy, crippling. He was only trying to help me, to protect me. If I hadn't dragged him into this, maybe he'd still be safe. Maybe he wouldn't have gone into the forest alone. Back at home, I couldn't sit still. I kept walking in circles, muttering prayers, holding the Mutia so tight my fingers started to bleed. I placed a basin of water with salt under my window, just like Mang Isco taught me. I lit a candle and closed every door and mirror. Still, I didn't feel safe. Not from outside. Not from within. That night, I dreamed of my mother. She stood by the river, her long dress soaked in blood. She wasn't smiling. Her eyes were empty. She held out her hand to me, and when I reached for it, she whispered, "Forgive us, Anik. We had no choice." And then she vanished into the water. I woke up shaking, tears in my eyes. There were things I hadn't wanted to believe, but now they were becoming impossible to ignore. My family, my own blood, had done something monstrous. They didn't just suffer the curse. They caused it. They gave something away, traded lives like currency. And I was the payment due. I found an old photo the next day, buried in a tin box under the stairs. My mother and father stood beside a man I didn't recognize, tall, pale, with eyes that didn't seem to belong in any human face. Behind them, in faint chalk, was the same sigil from the journal. The curse symbol. They knew. They knew everything. I felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. Everything I believed in, my memories of my parents, their love, the stories they told me before bed, it all felt like lies now. And yet, I still missed them. Still loved them. Was that wrong? I told Mang Isco everything. He listened silently, chewing the end of a tobacco leaf. Sometimes, survival turns good people into monsters, he finally said. But knowing the truth is not a curse, Eli. It's a responsibility. He handed me a new charm, a piece of bolete root, carved into the shape of a snake. They'll send smaller spirits now, he warned. Not to kill you, but to confuse you, distract you. Doubt is their favorite weapon. I laughed bitterly. They're doing a great job. That night, I heard a knocking at my door. It was soft, rhythmic. I froze. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks again. I looked through the peephole. No one. But then I heard it, whispers. Not outside, inside. I turned and saw the hallway growing darker, longer, like it was being stretched by invisible hands. My feet wouldn't move. The walls pulsed like living flesh. Then, Eli. It was Mateo's voice. I spun around. He was standing at the end of the hall. Pale. Wet. Dirt on his clothes. Mateo. I stepped forward. But something was wrong. He didn't blink. Didn't breathe. His eyes, they were too wide. I found it, he said, smiling too hard. The door. It's open now. I stepped back. My hand reached into my pocket for the mutia. The second my fingers touched it, his form twitched. His head snapped sideways like a puppet with cut strings. You're not him, I whispered. And then he screamed. Not like a person. Like a thing. Sharp, high-pitched, animalistic. I threw salt across the floor. The illusion shattered like glass. There was no Mateo. Just a black shadow writhing on the ground before it vanished into smoke. I collapsed, heart racing. They were playing with my mind now, using my memories against me. The next morning, Mang Isco called it a Salindala, a mimic spirit. Low level. Used for emotional attacks. They know your weakness, he said quietly. And they'll use it again. I wanted to scream. To cry. To quit. But I couldn't. The more I learned, the more I saw how deep this went. My town wasn't just unlucky. It was infected. A crack had opened between our world and theirs, and I was the seal. I began to train harder. Even when my body ached. Even when I wanted to sleep for days. Every day, I walked the edge of the forest, listening for whispers. Every night, I set protective wards, just to survive until dawn. And still, I thought of Mateo. What if he was alive? What if they were holding him, using him? Could I just let that go? One afternoon, as I was gathering herbs by the river, I felt something strange, a pull. Not painful, just firm. I followed it. Through the trees. Across a broken path I had never seen before. There, hidden beneath vines and stone, was a well. Old. Covered with markings I couldn't read. As I leaned over, the wind picked up. And I heard it. His voice. Eli, it was Mateo? Faint. But real. He was calling for help. I dropped the herbs and ran back to Mang Isco. He went pale when I told him. That place, he said, was used to trap spirits. The Aswangs used it to store souls they couldn't consume yet. It's forbidden ground. Then I need to go there. You'll die, he warned. You're not ready. I didn't answer. That night, I packed salt, the mutia, the bolete charm, and a single candle. I walked back to the well. And this time, I climbed down. The walls were slick and cold. The air thick. Heavy. About halfway down, the candle flickered. And then everything went dark. Pitch black. I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe, but I heard it, scratching, and a voice, deep, old, angry. You carry their shame, it growled. And soon, you'll carry their fate. Something brushed against my leg. I lit the candle again. The flame showed dozens of handprints along the wall. Small, large, twisted. Then something moved behind me. I turned and came face to face with a creature. Pale skin, sunken eyes, its mouth stretched too wide. It hissed, and I felt the candle flicker again. But the mutia began to glow. My heartbeat steadied. I lifted the charm and whispered the chants Mang Isco taught me. The creature screamed and vanished into mist. And then quiet. And a voice. Eli Mateo? Faint, but closer. I'm here, I whispered. I'm coming. And I kept climbing down. The cold of the well seeped deep into Eli's bones as he kept climbing down, the walls growing tighter, the air thicker. The mutia around his neck pulsed with a strange warmth, the only thing that reminded him he was still alive, still human. Each step deeper felt like a step further away from the world above, a world where sunlight touched skin, where laughter was real, and where fear didn't live in the shadows. He didn't know how long he'd been inside the well. There was no time in that place. Only whispers, scratches, and a darkness that felt alive. But somewhere below, he could still hear Mateo's voice. Faint, weak, but real. I'm coming, he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. Finally, his feet touched solid ground. A chamber opened up before him, lit by an eerie blue glow coming from veins in the stone walls. He wasn't alone. Shapes moved just outside the edge of the light, silent, watching, waiting. He could feel them, like eyes pressing against his skin. In the center of the chamber was a stone altar. And chained to it, half conscious, was Mateo. Eli ran forward, but the ground pulsed. Something deep below let out a slow, vibrating growl. The shadows around the chamber hissed and twisted, slowly taking form figures with hollow faces, their eyes glowing red, their mouths split wide in permanent screams. A swang. Real ones. Not illusions. Not Celindula. These were the ancient kind. The ones who fed not just on flesh, but on spirit. On soul. Eli backed away, gripping the mutia. It pulsed brighter, hotter, like it was reacting to them. The Aswang snarled but did not attack. Not yet. One of them stepped forward. Taller than the others. Its voice was like dry leaves crumbling. You've brought the last piece, it said. The blood that was promised. The dead is old, but the seal is fresh. Eli didn't understand. Not fully. But he knew they wanted him. Not Mateo. Him. I won't give you anything, he said, his voice shaking. The lead Aswang tilted its head. You already have. Then it vanished. The others followed. And the chamber went silent again. Eli reached Mateo and broke the chains with the Belit charm. Mateo fell into his arms, weak but breathing. They're not done, Mateo whispered. They're only beginning. Eli helped him up. Together, they climbed out of the well, every step heavy with exhaustion and fear. Back at Mang Isco's, they both collapsed. The albulario looked more worried than ever. He wrapped them in blankets, gave them tea mixed with ash and bark, and began chanting prayers in a dialect Eli couldn't understand. The well was a trap, Mang Isco said quietly. But they let you leave. Why? Eli asked. Because you're marked now. That night, Eli couldn't sleep. His dreams were filled with red skies and burning trees. He saw his parents again, but this time they were running, chased by something with too many legs and too many eyes. In the morning, they found strange symbols burned into the soil outside the house. The chickens were dead. The windows cracked without being touched. The curse was spreading. Mang Isco explained what he had feared all along. When Eli was born, the village elders performed a ritual to bind an ancient evil beneath the earth. Eli's blood was used as the final seal. That was the truth behind his parents' secret. They didn't curse him. They saved the whole town by sacrificing his soul as a lock. But the lock is breaking, Mang Isco said. And you're the only one who can repair it, or become what's inside. Eli wanted to run. He wanted to disappear, pretend none of this was real. But Mateo looked at him with tired, honest eyes. We can still stop it. Together, they began training harder. Every night, Mang Isco taught them older, forgotten rituals. How to create traps with ash and rice. How to bend light using ancient chants. How to resist illusions. How to feel with their hearts instead of eyes. But the signs were everywhere. The town changed. More livestock died. People stopped speaking outside their homes. Strange animals walked upright in the rice fields. Children spoke of shadow playmates. The priest found black feathers inside the holy water font. And then, a farmer disappeared. Then two more. Their homes were torn apart. No blood. Just silence. Eli stood at the edge of the rice field one evening, watching the horizon. The sky turned the color of dried blood. Mateo joined him, silent for a moment. "They're coming," Mateo said. "I know. Are you scared?" Eli hesitated. "Yes." They stood there, shoulder to shoulder. "I still hear them sometimes," Mateo said. "Whispers. Promises. If I just walk away, they'll give me everything I ever wanted." Eli looked down. "They promised me peace," he said. "But only if I stop fighting." They didn't speak for a while. Then Mateo reached into his jacket and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. "I found this," he said, handing it to Eli. It was an old kabibi, carved with the same sigil Eli saw in the journal. But this one glowed softly. Inside, there was a tiny sliver of light, like a piece of star trapped in shell. "It's a weapon," Mateo said. "Or a key. Mang Isco doesn't know. But I think it's meant for you." Eli held the kabibi. His hand stopped shaking. That night, as they prepared for what could be their final stand, the wind shifted. A howling came from the trees. Not natural. Not of this world. The enemy was moving. Gathering. The border between their world and ours was thinning. Cracking. Mang Isco marked the doors with chicken blood and burned herbs in every corner of the house. They set traps. Readied weapons carved from bone and silver. Eli sat by the fire, the mutia around his neck, the kabibi in his hand. He stared into the flames, seeing flashes of a past not his own, his parents kneeling, begging a spirit. A river of blood. A choice made in desperation. "I don't hate them," he said aloud. Mateo looked at him. "I thought I would. But they were just trying to save me. Save everyone." "You're stronger than you think," Mateo said. "No," Eli replied. "I'm just tired of running." Outside, the trees began to move. Not from wind. From footsteps. Large. Slow. Surrounding them. The air turned heavy. The sky darker than night. Eli stood. This was it. The beginning of the end. The wind outside was howling like a wounded animal. The flames in Mang Isco's house danced violently, casting shadows that looked too alive, too aware. Eli stood near the door, gripping the kabibi tightly. Its faint glow flickered, like it too was uncertain, or maybe afraid. Every breath he took felt heavy, like the air didn't want to be inside him anymore. Mateo was sharpening a dagger made from old carabao horn. He was quiet, focused, but his eyes kept drifting to the window where the trees swayed unnaturally. There were no stars in the sky. No moon either. Just blackness, endless and waiting. Mang Isco stood by the altar he had made, chanting softly. He had drawn a large circle of salt and charcoal on the ground, then placed the mutia at its center. The symbols pulsed with a sickly yellow light, reacting to something, maybe someone, coming closer. Eli could feel it too. "They're near," he whispered. Mang Isco nodded, but his voice was low. "But they're not rushing. They're watching. Testing your fear." Eli swallowed hard. Let them watch. But deep inside, he knew he wasn't ready. Not completely. Not after what he just remembered. Just hours ago, when he held the kabibi by the fire, a new memory had unlocked. Not his. Not entirely. It was like he had slipped into someone else's soul. He saw his mother, not crying, not desperate, but chanting, calling. She wasn't just sealing the evil. She was bargaining with it. She gave Eli up not just to stop the curse, but to inherit it. The bloodline didn't protect. It passed the power forward. Eli was never meant to be just a seal. He was a vessel, a future home, for something. He hadn't told Mateo. Not yet. Not when hope was already hanging by a thread. Suddenly, a knock. Not a loud, desperate bang. Just a soft, Polite talk. Like a guest arriving late to dinner. They all froze. Mateo slowly rose, dagger in hand. Mang Isco's voice dropped to a whisper. Don't open the door. The knocking came again. Then a voice, gentle, familiar. Anik, it's me. Eli's breath caught. His mother's voice. Exactly as he remembered it. Anik, please, open the door. It's cold out here. Mateo turned to him, eyes wide. That's not real. But it sounded real. Too real. Eli took a step forward, almost without thinking. Eli, no? Mang Isco said firmly. That thing knows your memories. It's wearing your mother's voice. But Eli's heart was pounding. His knees felt weak. What if it really was her? What if she never died? What if she had been out there, suffering? Anik, don't you miss me? The voice cracked, like it was crying. Eli's hand reached the doorknob. He felt the cold metal. He twisted it. But before the door opened, Mateo slammed it shut with his shoulder, locking it again. Eli, he shouted. Snap out of it. That's not your mother. Eli stumbled back, shaken. Then came the scream. From the other side of the door, no longer a mother's voice, but something deeper, darker, like dozens of mouths screaming together. The wall shook. The salt circle broke at the edge. One of the symbols flickered, then went dark. Mang Isco began chanting louder, faster. They're not playing anymore, he said. They're trying to break the seal. Suddenly, the window behind Mateo shattered. Something fast, black, and winged flew inside, slashing his arm before vanishing into the shadows. Mateo screamed, dropping the dagger. Blood dripped to the floor, sizzling as it touched the old wood. Mang Isco, Eli shouted. The albulario rushed to Mateo, pulling herbs from his belt, pressing them into the wound. Eli grabbed the kabibi and stepped into the broken salt circle. The moment he entered, the mutia glowed brighter. The light grew stronger, warmer, like it recognized him, like it belonged to him. Then a voice echoed in his head. Not the enemy, not his mother. Something older. You are the gate. You are the chain. Eli dropped to his knees. Visions flooded his mind, of Aswangs kneeling before a figure in black, of villages burning, of blood sigils etched into his family tree. He saw his father, screaming as something crawled into his shadow. They didn't just seal the evil. They joined it. You are not the savior. You are the key. He gasped. Mateo looked at him, eyes wide. Eli, what's happening? Eli stared at his trembling hands. They didn't sacrifice me, he whispered. They chose me. What? My parents. The elders. They didn't protect the town. They offered me to keep it safe. As a container. A bridge between worlds. Mang Isco's face went pale. That's why the Aswang don't kill you, he said slowly. They're not after you. They're waiting for you. The truth hit Eli like ice. All this time, he thought he was chosen to fight. But what if he was chosen to bring them in? The mutia began pulsing faster, the kabibi glowing hot in his hand. They're coming, Mang Isco whispered, to claim what was promised. Suddenly, the ground cracked beneath the altar. A hand, long, pale, clawed, reached through. Another symbol shattered. The seal was breaking. Eli backed away, but the kabibi pulled him forward. It wanted him to step closer, to accept. No, he said. I'm not their key. But deep inside, a voice laughed. You already opened the door. The walls of the house began to bleed black smoke. The shadows moved unnaturally. Mateo struggled to stay conscious. Mang Isco chanted until blood came from his nose. And then, through the smoke, someone stepped out. A man, or something wearing the idea of a man. He looked familiar, wearing his father's face, but with eyes like pits. Hello, Eli, it said. Ready to go home? Eli couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Mateo screamed his name, reaching out. But it was too late. The thing raised a finger, and the world shattered. Everything went dark. The darkness didn't just fall, it devoured. Eli floated in nothingness. No ground beneath him, no sky above. Just endless shadows whispering in a language he didn't understand but somehow felt deep in his bones. Then snap, like a string being pulled too tight, the darkness shifted. He was standing. The world around him pulsed like a beating heart. Shapes floated in and out of vision, ghosts of memory, pain, and things far older than human thought. He saw his mother chanting, his father screaming, the village in flames. And behind it all, the figure with his father's face, but not his father's soul. The impostor stood ahead of him again, calm, composed, eyes gleaming like bottomless wells. "You've come far," it said, voice like cracking ice. Eli tightened his grip on the Kabibi. Its glow was no longer warm. It was searing hot, burning into his palm, but he held on. "I'm not yours," Eli said. His voice echoed unnaturally in the dark. The impostor smiled. "Not yet, but you've always belonged to this. You were made for it." All around, the shadows shifted. Dozens of shapes emerged, eyes, teeth, wings, claws. The Aswang horde, no longer hiding in the forests or beneath floorboards. They were here, with him, inside this broken world. One stepped forward. A woman with half her face burned, eyes milky white, hair hanging like wet weeds. "Your blood sings, child," she rasped. "The pact runs deep. Your ancestors promised you to us." Eli's heart pounded. He turned slowly, watching as more and more surrounded him. "You think you've been fighting us," the impostor continued. "But you were running from yourself. From the truth. Which is that you are the bridge. The door. You are the curse. Not a victim. A vessel." Eli's knees weakened. He wanted to collapse. To scream. But something inside him pushed back. Not the Kabibi. Not the Mutia. Something older. Raw. Human. A memory. Mateo, laughing beside him under the rain. Mang Isco, chanting even as his nose bled, refusing to give in. His mother, yes, even her, choosing something in that final moment. Not just fear. Hope. He was more than his blood. He was more than a promise made in the dark. He was Eli. He looked at the impostor and stepped forward. "Then I choose." The shadows hissed. The Aswang recoiled slightly. "You can't choose what's already destined," the impostor snapped. "I'm not choosing the curse," Eli said. "I'm choosing to end it." He lifted the Kabibi high. It cracked. The glow flared so bright the shadows screamed, shrinking back. The entire place trembled. "What are you doing?" the burned woman cried. "You'll destroy yourself." Eli gritted his teeth as the light poured from the Kabibi, burning through his arms and into his chest. It hurt like fire eating him from the inside out, but he didn't stop. "If I'm the door," he shouted, "then I get to shut it." The impostor lunged, shape shifting midair, turning into a massive black-winged beast with tusks and claws. The Aswang screamed, rushing toward him. But Eli didn't move. He turned the Kabibi inward, pressing it to his own heart. The moment it touched his skin, everything stopped. Silence. Light. Then, boom, a wave of blinding energy exploded from him, sending the beasts flying, shattering their forms into ash. The impostor howled as the blast struck him, wings torn apart mid-flight, body falling into pieces that scattered like dying sparks. And then stillness. Eli dropped to his knees. He was back. The house. The altar. Mateo lying on the floor, barely conscious. Mang Isco collapsed but breathing. Smoke still lingered, but the evil, that evil, was gone. The Kabibi was no longer glowing. It was just a shell. Cold. Silent. Empty. Eli's arms shook. His chest burned. But he was alive. "Mateo," he croaked, crawling to his friend. Mateo stirred. "You did it." "I think so." Mang Isco coughed weakly, turning his head. "You sealed them." Eli shook his head. "No. I ended them. The ones that made the pact. The ones that held my blood." The old man looked at him, awe in his eyes. "Then it's done?" Eli nodded slowly. "It has to be." But even as he said it, something gnawed at him. A feeling, like the air was too still. The Kabibi cracked in his hand. He looked down. It wasn't empty. A thin line of black mist seeped from it. Not much. Just a thread. But enough. "Eli," Mateo whispered. "Your eyes?" Eli blinked. His vision sharpened. Too sharp. He could see the dust in the air. The heat from Mang Isco's skin. the blood drying on Mateo's sleeve. He could hear everything. A heartbeat under the floorboards. A whisper outside the walls. The curse was gone, but something else had taken its place. You shattered the gate, a voice whispered inside him. But the key is still yours. Eli didn't scream. He just sat there, breathing, understanding. He had won the battle, but the war was just beginning. The sun hadn't risen, but the darkness no longer felt suffocating. Eli stood outside the house, staring at the horizon. There was silence, thick, almost sacred. Behind him, the old altar where Mang Isko had collapsed now looked ordinary, the spirits that once circled it finally gone. Mateo was resting inside, bandaged and asleep, chest rising with peace for the first time in days. But Eli couldn't sleep. He couldn't rest. The Kabibi shell lay cold in his hand, cracked but not empty. That thin wisp of darkness he saw earlier, it hadn't disappeared. It had entered him. At first, he thought it was just residue from the ritual, maybe a part of the evil lingering. But as the hours passed, Eli realized it wasn't the enemy's curse anymore. It was his. A gift, or a scar, or both. He could hear more, see more. His senses had changed. His strength had grown, not in muscle, but in presence. The world felt slower to him now, more delicate, breakable. He had inherited something from the other side. Not by choice, but not completely against his will either. He remembered what the imposter said before it was destroyed. You are the bridge. And bridges, they don't just stand still. They connect. 2 weeks passed. The village was quiet again, but not in fear. This time, there was a softness to the silence, as if even the trees were healing. People who once whispered behind Eli's back now watched him with respect, some with fear, others with gratitude. Mang Isko had survived, though he could no longer walk without a cane. He called Eli Apo now, not by blood, but by bond. Mateo healed fast. He joked again, laughed again. But his eyes had changed too. He was no longer just a curious friend. He was someone who had stood inside darkness and chose to stay beside someone cursed. Still with me? Eli asked one night, handing him a piece of dried fish. Always, Mateo answered, not even hesitating. But not everything healed. Eli returned to the ruins of his childhood home. The roof had fallen in. Weeds grew through the floor. But he needed to see it, to remember. He sat where his mother once lit candles every Friday. He didn't cry, but he spoke. I forgive you, he whispered. For what you did. For what you gave me. I know now, it wasn't all your fault. In the silence, a soft wind blew. The candle stub beside him flickered. Then, for just 1 second, he smelled her, dried sampaguita and old soap. It was enough. He smiled for the first time in weeks. Word spread fast. About the boy who stopped the curse, who faced the Aswangs and survived. People came. From nearby towns. From the mountains. They asked for blessings. For protection. For help. Eli didn't turn them away. But he didn't claim to be a hero either. He just listened. Sometimes he prayed with them. Other times he walked with them into the forest, holding the Kabibi, sensing where the shadows still lived. Where old packs still echoed. There were still threats. Spirits that hadn't crossed over. Creatures disturbed by the battle. But Eli wasn't afraid anymore. He had become something else. Not quite human. Not quite monster. Something between. One night, Mateo joined him near the riverbank. They sat quietly, feet in the water. Do you ever feel different now? Mateo asked. Eli nodded. Every day. Does it scare you? Eli paused. Not the power, but what it could turn me into. Mateo looked at him. You're still you, even with all this. Am I? Yes, Mateo said firmly. Because you choose to be. And as long as you keep choosing, you won't become them. Eli looked down at his hands. They looked normal. But he knew, under the skin, something ancient lived now. He clenched his fist. I just hope that's enough. Seasons changed. The village rebuilt. Children played near the trees again. Old men told stories with pride. Women laughed while hanging laundry in the sun. The fear had left, but legends had begun. They called Eli the one who closed the door. Some said he had wings. Others said he could talk to the dead. But Eli didn't care about titles. He only cared about keeping the peace. One day, a woman arrived, dressed in black, eyes sharp, like a hawk. She walked with a strange limp. She introduced herself as Aling Pina, from a town beyond the southern mountains. "There's something wrong there," she said quietly. "Children disappearing. Shadows whispering in our sleep. We thought it was just fear. But now, something's growing." Eli listened. He felt it, like a breeze from far away, cold and sour. The curse he destroyed, maybe it had roots elsewhere. Or maybe something worse was rising. He looked at Mateo, who simply nodded, ready. Then he looked at Aling Pina. "I'll come," he said. That night, before leaving, he stood once more outside the old house. He buried the kabibi beneath the tree, not to hide it, but to return it. "The curse ends here," he said softly. "But the fight goes on." He turned, walking into the dark, not as a boy burdened by a past, but as someone who chose to carry the future. Final reflection. In the end, Eli didn't become a monster, nor a saint. He became a reminder that even those born in shadows can choose to stand in the light, and that the scariest stories are not the ones about monsters, but the ones about ourselves and how we face the darkness inside. Because sometimes, horror isn't just what hunts us. It's what we carry, and what we decide to do with it.